Obedience to the output. You sit in meetings where a dashboard number ends the argument, even when no one can explain how it was calculated. A notification says denied, and the checklist moves on, leaving your work, and sometimes your dignity, unaccounted for. People obey systems they do not understand because those systems quietly rearrange the costs of disagreement. The output looks objective. The process is hidden behind interfaces and policies, and the burden of proof shifts onto the person who resists. In a technological society, authority often arrives as a score, a queue position, an automated approval, a risk flag, a performance rank, simple artifacts that travel well in emails, slides, and audits. The system does not need to be understood to be obeyed. It only needs to be enforced, repeatable, and attached to consequences that are personal and immediate. Look at the mechanics. First, there is a constraint: access. Systems control access to time, money, attention, and permission. Who gets the appointment? Whose request is complete? Which application is eligible? Which account can proceed? When a system is the gate, the easiest path is compliance, because non-compliance is not just disagreement. It is delay, friction, and often a paper trail that marks the resistor as difficult. Second, there is an incentive: measurable throughput. Organizations reward what can be counted: tickets closed, forms processed, cases resolved, risk reduced. A model, a rule engine, or a standardized checklist turns messy human situations into comparable units. Managers benefit because they can report progress. The organization benefits because it can scale decisions with fewer people. Vendors benefit because they can sell consistency. The cost is borne by those whose lives do not fit the categories: the edge case, the newcomer, the person with missing documentation, the worker whose value is not captured by the metric, the customer who needs explanation rather than a denial code. Third, there is a feedback loop. Obedience trains the system, and the system trains obedience. When people accept outputs without challenge, the record shows smooth operation. Fewer appeals appear, fewer exceptions are logged, fewer manual overrides occur. That becomes evidence that the system is working, which justifies expanding it. Meanwhile, every time a human is forced to override, they spend social capital and time, and they risk being blamed if the override later looks wrong. Over time, the rational behavior becomes defer to the output. Fourth, there is a trade-off: transparency versus speed. Systems that are explainable in full are often slower, more contested, and harder to scale. Systems that are fast and uniform often become less legible to the people subject to them. Many institutions choose speed because speed reduces costs and increases volume. But the externality is confusion. People cannot tell whether a decision was fair or simply efficient. Finally, there is the appearance of objectivity. Numbers and rankings feel like facts. A chart does not raise its voice, a score does not look angry, an automated message does not look biased. That calm surface encourages trust. Yet the output encodes choices: which data counts, which outcomes matter, whose errors are acceptable, and whose are intolerable. No system is neutral. Every system encodes values. When those values are not discussed, they return as authority. When we obey what we cannot understand, we trade agency for frictionless passage. That trade can be reasonable in small doses. Nobody wants to debate every checkbox, but it becomes corrosive when it shakes identity. I am my score. My work is my metric. My worth is my rank. Dignity gets reduced to compliance, and responsibility becomes hard to locate. The person on the front line often becomes the face of the system without having power over it. They are asked to enforce outcomes they did not design, using language they did not choose, under constraints they cannot change. The designer and the institution, meanwhile, can point to policy, documentation, or the model as if agency evaporates inside the machine. But responsibility is distributed, not dissolved. Attention is part of the power here. Dashboards train attention toward what is visible and away from what is important but uncounted. Context, care, explanation, consent, the long-term consequences of a denial or a flag. The more attention is absorbed by metrics, the less space remains to notice harm that is not captured by the metric. The system becomes persuasive, not because it is always correct, but because it monopolizes what counts as evidence. So the question is not only, is the output accurate? It is also, What kind of person does this system ask me to become in order to move through it? Notice where authority arrives in your day as an interface: a score, a cue, a badge, a green check, an automated denial. Notice how quickly conversation ends when the output appears, and how quickly responsibility moves from people to process. Consider who benefits from that quiet ending, who saves time, who avoids accountability, who gains predictability, and consider who bears the cost: the one required to explain themselves, the one who cannot appeal, the one whose story becomes insufficient data. Name the cost, not just the benefit. Name what is being optimized, what is being ignored, and what kinds of human judgment are being treated as noise. And name where you are being trained to trust the appearance of objectivity more than your own careful attention to consequences. A system becomes powerful when it can be obeyed without being understood. Let the last word be simple: keep responsibility close, even when the screen tries to move it away.